both Twitch TV and here on YouTube. Thank you for checking out the stream today. Let me get our phone all set up here so you guys can see what's going on. You see the fit. We got the Halloween shirt on. Mikey Myers out here getting ready for spooky season, of course. Libra season has arrived. We are ready. So there you go. We're rocking the shirt. And we are going to switch over to the live feed here on Twitch TV as well. So everybody watching on Twitch can see what's going on. It's a little bright out right now. We got to do some stuff early today because we need to get these streams going before it hits 9 o'clock. The Oregon Ducks are playing tonight. So I'm going to be watching that for Friday Night Football. And of course, we're most likely going to be taking a break this weekend as well. Saturday, college football. And then Sunday, we got the Bills playing again. The Bills versus the Houston Texans. Josh Allen versus Stephon Diggs coming up on Sunday. Should be a banger. Okay, so the thing that I want to talk about before I get started with the stream, I do just want to apologize, guys. The last time that I streamed, I believe it was the Mr. McMahon episode 5 here on Netflix. Towards the end of the stream, I kind of started fumbling my words a little bit. I couldn't really pronounce the word creatively, which as you can see right now, I'm pronouncing it just fine. But I did have some trouble with saying that word creatively. Honestly, it just has to do with a lot of the depression, guys. The depression has been really bad for me over the years. I feel like it's actually getting worse because when things like that start to happen, like I've started to realize, like it's just become a little bit harder for me sometimes trying to like speak and just talk in normal conversations. So, you know, I do want to apologize for fumbling my words there a bit at the end of the stream. Hopefully, though, this stream can be good. We are going to do the final episode here, Mr. McMahon, episode 6 on Netflix here. This is the end of the documentary, so this will be the final episode with Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon, and the Netflix series, unless there's going to be a season 2. I don't know if they're going to do a season 2. This is only a 6-part season right here for part 1, if that's what you want to call it, for this first part of the documentary. But this is the final episode, and then later on today, maybe around like 4 or 5, maybe even a bit sooner than that, we will be doing a Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Halloween special. So that is going to be our first Halloween special of the month later today. Try and check that out if you guys have some time. I definitely would appreciate it so much. And here we go. We're going to find out the overall truth, the final outcome, in this final episode. Episode 6, Mr. McMahon, the documentary on Netflix. How's everybody doing out there? Hopefully you guys are okay. Current date, October 4th, 2024.
You need break quick.
Calm down, Sylvester. Okay. This is it, guys. Final episode. And it is called The Finish. It is very appropriate for the final episode here. Is it going to be a false finish, though? That's the question. That's the question, WWE. You know WWE likes to give us the false finishes. We'll see.
I have, it's not 2 different brains. I have like computers in my head.
Calm down, Vince. You don't got computers in your head. Just want to also make a quick little note. We're sipping on some Monster juice, some Monster Energy here. This is the Aussie lemonade. So we got a little bit of Aussie lemonade there for everybody watching. Not sponsored by Monster, but I'm trying to be. If they're ever watching any of the videos, want to shout out your boy. I am always available in the DMs. Please consider me. All right. A little bit of Aussie lemonade is the drink of choice for what we're sipping on. Let's get started. Mr. McMahon, Episode 6, The Finish, the Netflix documentary.
And sometimes they work against me. I have one computer talking to you right now, and there's another one going on with me thinking something completely different. And then there's a third one sometimes. If I were to tap into it, I could. And so it's difficult for me sometimes to pay attention to things. And it's bothered me through the years because all I wanted to be was just normal. I wanted to fit in. But I deal with it because that's who you are. Just deal with events. Doesn't matter what you want to be this way or you want to be that way. Here's where you are. You're different. Be different. And now the expression of fuck the world. So that's where I am now.
What's the other brain thinking about now?
Something having a lot of fun, and it is involving sex.
Calm down, Vince. You hound dog, you scoundrel. Episode 6, The Finish. And like I talked about in the beginning, guys, I do just want to apologize for fumbling my words in the last video. Couldn't really pronounce the word creatively, but as you can see right now, I'm doing just fine. Like I said, some days the depression is worse than others, but it definitely has to do with a lot of my depression and just the inability sometimes to be able to speak properly or just in certain conversations the way that I should be. So I do just want to apologize for fumbling my words in the last stream. But hopefully a little bit of a bit better stream today. I am also thinking about, if things go good for me, okay, I got some stuff planned for later in this month. So if things kind of work out, you know, your boy's got a birthday coming up as well, October 18th. Don't forget, the day after my boy Eminem, October 17th, October 18th right here, Libra Squad. But if things kind of go good for me, I am thinking about doing a Max account, HBO Max. I'm thinking about signing up for that, giving them a little bit of a subscription, because I have heard recently that AEW has a new streaming deal coming up and that all the pay-per-views, PLEs, however you want to call them, my generation knows them as pay-per-views. This new current wrestling modern day era knows them as PLEs, premium live events. Either fucking way, AEW, All Elite Wrestling, has a new streaming deal coming up with HBO Max. And all of their events are going to be available on Max to watch. So I'm thinking about doing that for sure. And maybe we'll be able to do some watch-alongs for that. But let's get back into this. It says, in January 2024, Vince McMahon resigned from WWE after allegations involving sexual misconduct, assault, and trafficking. The majority of the following interviews, including with Vince McMahon, were filmed before the allegations were made public. This is 2007.
Every year.
And how fucking appropriate is it, too? They got fucking... In 2007, that was the year for WrestleMania 23. And obviously, Vince McMahon and Donald Trump they consider themselves buddies. I know they definitely consider themselves buddies, but how fitting is it that Vince McMahon would damn near be an associate with Donald Trump? I don't know. Makes a whole lot of sense to me, because if he's got these kind of allegations against him, I can see why he's friends with Donald Trump. But this is currently in the year 2007, when Donald Trump was actually a part of WrestleMania 23. They had the billionaire versus billionaire match. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And actually, even before that, even before 2007 and WrestleMania 23, Donald Trump was at WrestleManias way before that. I think he was at the first one ever in Vegas at WrestleMania 9. And maybe even like WrestleMania 12 or 13, something like that. But I know Donald Trump has definitely gone to a few WrestleManias on occasion. But it is unfortunate that two criminals, two crooks, would definitely befriend each other.
Shut up!
Coming out of the Attitude Era and into the 2000s, Vince McMahon was still a hugely important on-screen character for the company. But without Austin, they were always in search of something for him to do.
And now it is time for the Battle of the Billionaires Hair versus Hair match.
Battle of the Billionaires.
Look at that man right there, Donald Trump.
So many celebrities come into our business and have a blast. And Donald was one of them. Donald had always been a fan.
Isn't Donald Trump in the fucking Hall of Fame too for the WWE? These guys got a literal fucking president in the WWE Hall of Fame. It's fucked, ladies and gentlemen. It's fucked. Some of you weren't even there for my era when I was growing up and watching it. It was fucked back then. It's even more fucked now.
So I went to Donald and I said, I have this idea. What if we each have a wrestler that represents us at WrestleMania? And if Donald Trump loses, then I shave his head. Of course, if I lose, same thing.
The Donald Trump Vince McMahon Battle of the Billionaires feud, it was the biggest pay-per-view audience in the history of pro wrestling pay-per-view. It was a giant, giant attraction.
I remember at first too, like the storyline buildup was supposed to be like Donald Trump versus Rosie O'Donnell or some shit like that. But they ended up obviously going more of the direction of Trump versus McMahon. And apparently it was really popular at the time. I do remember WrestleMania 23 being very popular. WrestleMania 23 was from Detroit, Michigan. And I believe that's when they finally introduced Ford Field as well. So apparently this was a really popular match on the card.
I was entertained by Trump when he was on the show.
Now I'm not going to lie. Obviously, especially back then, I was there for the more actual fucking wrestling matches than the gimmick matches. But, they wanted to have Donald Trump at WrestleMania 23. They got him to agree. And, like they've said, too, it's not uncommon for celebrities to appear in WWE, let alone at WrestleMania.
Come on up here. His ability to speak to wrestling fans was excellent.
To me, they look like a very smart group of people.
He was kind of perfect for the role.
I think, too, when they had Donald Trump doing this whole storyline with McMahon, there was a night where, like, Donald Trump was the guest general manager for Monday Night Raw. He did like it was like the first time, one of the first times ever, I believe, that they actually did like a whole hour of television with no commercials. I remember the one night at the end of the event, I think it was Monday Night Raw, like money just fell from the ceiling. And of course it was fake money. It just had Donald Trump's face on it, or it might have actually been actual money. I can't really remember looking back on it now. I mean, this shit was in 2007, almost fucking 20 years ago. But I do remember shit like that happening where he did like the first hour of Raw would be like commercial free. That was like really big at the time. And then I do remember seeing Donald Trump money falling from the sky. I wasn't in attendance at any of those events, of course, because Buffalo, New York isn't big enough for any of that shit, but...
In truth, Donald Trump's sensibility and public persona is much closer to that of a wrestler than to a statesman.
Oh, throw him the hell out of here. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Our fingerprints are on so many things in the world. Politics, absolutely, my God. Why wouldn't you want to be like WWE?
I can do whatever the hell I want.
I have the right to do whatever I want as president.
This is what we do.
Since we're talking about presidential candidates and politics, okay, I say, honestly, I've never been a fan of Donald Trump as president. I liked Obama. I liked when Obama had America under control and things were a little bit easier for us. But honestly, if you want to know who I want to vote as president, I haven't voted in fucking years either. I don't vote for people unless I absolutely agree with their, with their decisions and their ideas. I haven't voted probably since Obama was going for his second term. I mean, I haven't voted since I turned like 16 or 18, but it's been a fucking long time. It's definitely been a long time. I don't casually like vote for presidents. I don't vote for politics. I don't even enjoy talking about politics. But I definitely don't vote for people unless I absolutely agree with them, which is why I haven't voted in years. If you do want to know who I would like to see as president, I say we get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in there. I would vote for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I tell you right now, chat. I'm telling my channel right now, all my subscribers, anybody watching this video, I would vote Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as the president, okay? I don't give a fuck about all these other guys. I don't give a fuck about the 2024 election. But you put Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in front of me and he's got my vote, all right? You give him America. Let's see what he does with it.
We present larger-than-life characters making outlandish statements that make people go, oh my God, I can't believe he said that.
Donald Trump is an example of what seems to be a kind of pro-wrestlingification of American politics and American society.
If you're going to look at the influence of Vince McMahon and pro wrestling on culture, man, we elected a president that was playing a pro wrestler on TV.
And that's exactly why we need Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as a president. Okay, it has happened. It has happened. Let's make it happen, but this time with an actual fucking wrestler. With somebody who might actually do some good for America. I don't know. It's not my job to run the country. Apparently, it's my job to vote for whoever runs the country, though. I say Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, damn it.
I don't know if it's Trump being Trump or he learned from wrestling, but I see similarities between Trump and Vince McMahon.
Mr. McMahon, he is the best WWE personality ever. But after the Attitude Era, like Mr. McMahon was a more selectively used character.
That's one way to describe it, Cena.
During the Ruthless Aggression era, we were always trying to pitch Vince to have a midlife crisis and become crazy or something like that.
You know what, too? Like, I kind of always hate calling wrestling by, like, certain eras. Like, I do appreciate the Attitude Era because that's exactly what it was. But to me, wrestling isn't really so much about eras. Like, you would have, like, the Ruthless Aggression era. I guess they want to call it, like, the reality era or just, like, the New Age era or shit like that. But to me, wrestling, especially in WWE, has kind of always just been, it has always just been dominated by like one major champion, okay, throughout the history. Now, as far as I'm looking back, you had like the Hulk Hogan era, okay, Hulk Hogan era. Then you basically had the Bret Hart and the Shawn Michaels era. And then you had the Stone Cold Steve Austin era. Then you had what could be considered as, you know, the Triple H era after Stone Cold, because Triple H did have a hell of a run in the early 2000s. The Triple H era, the Brock Lesnar era for a little bit, and I'm not talking about more recently. I'm talking about like before when he was actually a pretty good fucking wrestler and wanted to actually put on quality matches. And then, of course, you know, moving further down the line, you have the John Cena era. You have the Randy Orton era. You have the CM Punk era. The Daniel Bryan era, Bryan Danielson era. You would have, let's see, who would we consider after Bryan Danielson? I would say probably after Bryan Danielson, that's when we started to get a lot more of the Shield and a lot more of like Roman Reigns. So probably again moving into like that Brock Lesnar era and the Roman Reigns era. Obviously more Roman Reigns era today because he just came off of like the fucking 300-day streak or whatever it was, 400-day streak as the undisputed champion. And, you know, even moving forward, you know, I'm not a big Cody Rhodes guy. I don't really like Cody Rhodes that much. I mean, you know, you got to understand, I fucking watched him when he was with Legacy and when he first started in the company and when he really was just green as shit and didn't have, like, any experience under his boots other than working with Ted DiBiase Jr. and Randy Orton. I mean, I got to see him way before he was ever the American Nightmare. And Cody was not that big of a draw, honestly. Like, Cody was not that special of a wrestler. I could see down the line how, like, after he started working with AEW, when he actually did things with AEW, that's when I actually started to respect him a little bit more, because I said, hey, here's Cody actually trying to compete with the big dogs now, somebody who does have the experience in the business, trying to make their own thing happen on this side of the fence. You know what I mean? But ever since he kind of fucking played the it ain't working out for me card in AEW and came back to WWE with his fucking tail tucked between his legs, I really haven't been a fan. But I guess now, you know, the current generation, the current modern day fans would call it like the Cody Rhodes era. But, you know, for me, it still would be like Roman Reigns. But, you know, again, it's all kind of perspective based. But for me, I've always hated saying ruthless aggression era. I've always hated saying fucking reality era or just like new age era, whatever the fuck they want to call it. To me, like I said, it's always kind of just been specified by one dominant champion, one dominant person on the roster. You know, who really made that era special? That's what it's been about for me, at least as a fan and from my point of view. Like I said, it really started with the Hulk Hogan era, and then after that, it went into the Shawn Michaels and the Bret Hart era. After that, you had The Rock and you had Stone Cold, mainly Stone Cold era. After that, Triple H era. After that, fucking, like I said, a little bit of Brock Lesnar at the beginning of his career when he was actually a good wrestler. After that, it was mainly the John Cena era. And then after Cena, you could say Batista as well, but Cena was way bigger. I mean, they put the WWE Championship on Cena for a reason, and he's fucking 16-time champion, you know what I mean? Damn near tied with Ric Flair. Or he is tied with Ric Flair. He's one win away from breaking the record, I should say. But after Cena, it really got to take off with Randy Orton and his era. What he was doing was very special. After Orton, I would say CM Punk and the CM Punk era. After CM Punk, like I said, Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan. After Bryan Danielson, you have pretty much the Shield era and Roman Reigns. Some people could say, obviously, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. I mean, they did basically accomplish the same thing that Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock did during their era, the Attitude Era. Stone Cold and The Rock obviously were in 3 WrestleMania main events together, and I'm almost positive the same thing happened with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. But those are the only times that they've had, you know, a three-peat of those kind of like rivalries. I do remember the time when they had John Cena versus The Rock, and then the next year they immediately followed up with the rematch in New York. The Rock got to win in Miami at WrestleMania 28, and then John Cena actually won the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 29 in New York. And I did get to see The Rock and John Cena both in the ring together. They did come to Buffalo at one point on the road to WrestleMania for WrestleMania 29, and they were doing an edition of Old School Monday Night Raw. Like I think they still do it sometimes, but it was like Old School Monday Night Raw night. The main event was a fatal four-way match to determine who would face The Undertaker, and the main event was CM Punk versus The Big Show versus Sheamus versus Randy Orton. CM Punk won. Got to have the match with Undertaker, obviously, at WrestleMania 29. But I did get to see John Cena and The Rock in the ring together, and they cut a promo. They didn't wrestle that night, but they did cut the promo together in the ring. So I know the first time I seen The Rock in Buffalo, he was like live via satellite. He was cutting the promo on John Cena. But the next time he actually came to Buffalo, New York, and I got to see him live, and him and John Cena were cutting the promo for WrestleMania 29. But yeah, I guess nowadays, like, modern fans would want to describe it as like the Cody Rhodes era, but you know.
Trying to pitch Vince to have a midlife crisis and become crazy or something like that. But Vince wanted to go another way, which is like, well, what if someone kills me? Like, okay. So he cut a very cryptic, weird, un-Mr. McMahon-like promo in the ring. And then made this long walk back.
Now, this is very heartbreaking to talk about, too, obviously, because now they're getting into this promo that Mr. McMahon cut on an episode of Monday Night Raw. And the story was pretty much going to be the death of Mr. McMahon, or how it would be described in the story as like, you know, Mr. McMahon is just going to take some time away from television and nobody's going to see him for a while, and he's just going to be behind the scenes mainly. What ends up happening at the end of the show, Vince McMahon walks out to his limousine, gets in the limousine. As soon as he closes the door on the limo, it explodes like a fucking firework on the 4th of July. This storyline was dropped entirely because meanwhile, while they were doing that in the WWE, the unfortunate thing that also happened around the same time is that Chris Benoit, it's hard for me to describe it any other way, but Chris Benoit killed himself and his family. So the storyline that Mr. McMahon was doing about his death was completely dropped. It was completely removed from storylines, and they didn't follow through with an ending. All you got to see was Vince McMahon get in his limo and it exploded, and that was that until further explanation. Nobody ever got a further explanation. Nobody ever got to find out what happened to Vince McMahon because they dropped that storyline as soon as they heard about what happened with Chris Benoit and his family. So it's kind of unfortunate to talk about it now, looking back on it. I mean, like I said, I was alive for all of this. I watched all of this live as it was happening on television. And it's unfortunate. It's also kind of stupid to me that they would come up with the storyline like that, the death of Mr. McMahon. But yeah, that was completely dropped because of what happened in real life with the death of Chris Benoit and his family.
Backstage, passing all the talents, and then got into his limo, paused. It's very big on pauses for dramatic effect. And then the limo explodes.
The edit was perfect. And many individuals called, the office, it's okay.
Vince really wanted to treat it like real life. The website was reporting it was real, and the announcers were somber. In fact, from what I've heard, Donald Trump called up Vince's office to make sure Vince was okay.
So you can even hear them saying here in the documentary, they played it off like it was a real life death. Okay, the announcers had to play it off like Vince McMahon was really fucking dead and gone. They posted on their website, WWE.com, Vince McMahon is dead, shit like that. And they were even going to have a memorial service for Vince and McMahon. Obviously, Vince McMahon's still very much alive.
So that became a very controversial storyline. But certain tragic circumstances in real life happen.
Certain tragic circumstances in real life happen. So like I said, people never got an explanation to the death of Vince McMahon's story. The only thing fans ever got to see was Vince McMahon get in that limo. He closes the door. It explodes, goes up in flames. That's the end of that. Because the very next week, Vince McMahon was back on television. He was still very much alive. And he's not talking about the story. He's talking about the shit that happened in real life. The actual tragedy that happened in real life concerning Chris Benoit and his family. So
that forced us to stop that storyline.
Good evening. Tonight's storyline was to have been the alleged demise of my character, Mr. McMahon.
And before we go any further, I do just want to clear the air as well on my thoughts about Chris Benoit. it's unforgivable what he did to his family. It's unforgivable what he did in general. I like to remember Chris Benoit as the wrestler as opposed to the person in real life. I think it's important that they do remember him for his wrestling career and what he tried to do for pro wrestling. I myself actually had an autograph from Chris Benoit. This is a long time ago. This is before anything had ever happened, but I had an autograph from Chris Benoit. I lived at an apartment just a little bit up the street from me, maybe like 2-3 minutes. I literally moved from the apartment to the house I'm at right here filming this at now. But I had an autograph from Chris Benoit. It was given to me by somebody who was working at the arena. They knew that I was a wrestling fan. They said, listen, Dwayne, I'm going to get you an autograph. Didn't know who the autograph would be from. Never told me that it was going to be from Chris Benoit. Wasn't expecting it to be from Chris Benoit. But I had an autograph from Chris Benoit when I lived over at the apartment. One day I remember I literally put it in like a drawer. I shut the drawer, woke up the next day, it was gone. I never saw the fucking autograph again. Today, I kind of always think about it like, damn, what would that autograph have been worth? Would it have been worth anything? I don't know. It's technically a piece of wrestling history. Like I said, this is before Chris Benoit had even done the things that people know about him for today. This was probably around more like 2003, 2004. So kind of maybe around the time when he was World Heavyweight Champion as well, going into like WrestleMania 20. But it was very heartbreaking to find out what had actually happened years later. And there's times I still think about it today, like, damn, what would it be like if I still had that autograph or something? But I did once upon a time have an autograph from Chris Benoit. Obviously, I'm not the only person in the world, most likely, with an autograph from him. He was very common in giving those out. But that's my Chris Benoit story. So, like I said, I like to remember him more for what he did for pro wrestling as opposed to what he did in reality.
However, in reality, WWE superstar Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel are dead. Chris Benoit was thought of an excellent in-ring performer.
He's done everything in this business. He's been a world champion. He's one of the greatest of all time.
And as far as we knew, a great guy.
When a wrestler passes away, Raw the next night would become like a tribute to that individual. So we did one for Chris that night.
Tonight will be a tribute to Chris Benoit.
Now, they did have a tribute episode for Chris Benoit. All of the wrestlers were heartbroken. Everybody absolutely heartbroken when they found out the news on Benoit. But this is before they found out the news about anything else. Okay, so the first thing that happened was they found out that Chris Benoit died. They have an episode of Raw to tribute Chris Benoit. And this is before they had ever heard of the actual truth of what had happened. Nobody in that locker room probably had a fucking idea that that was the reality of the situation. But they did go on with the tribute episode. And even in today's history, if you go back and look at anything regarding like Chris Benoit, like the events that he was on, the pay-per-views, anything he was involved with, once WWE found out what did actually happen, they erased him from history. Okay, they no longer mention him. They don't talk about him. They don't include him, like I said, on any of the event listings. After the tribute show, they even erased the tribute show. Once they had the tribute for him, and then they found out exactly what happened in reality, they never even looked back on the tribute show. So.
And then while that show was airing, we started to get the details of what had actually happened and what Chris had done.
There is new information tonight in the death of pro wrestler Chris Benoit. Authorities in Georgia say it was no accident. Chris Benoit strangled his wife and smothered their 7-year-old son, and then hanged himself in their home.
When the instance with Chris Benoit happened, the murder-suicide, that rocked the very foundation of the WWE.
The Benoit tragedy put McMahon and his WWE back under the microscope. Allegations of steroid and drug abuse. Speculation began that roid rage might have been behind what happened that fateful weekend.
They were just pinning this whole thing on steroids. All I know is like steroids generally don't make you kill your whole family and do all that kind of stuff. There's no correlation between taking steroids and what happened to Chris Benoit. Human beings are flawed. Chris went nuts. It happens in every form of life and everything. So that's the only thing I can take away from him.
I was first a fan of Chris Benoit, and then I got to meet him when I started wrestling. I debuted in 2002.
And making his way to the ring, Christopher Lewinsky.
A Harvard graduate. This guy's great, Dale.
But about a year later, I got a concussion that ended my career. Everyone back in 2003, 2004 thought concussions were bullshit and that I was just weak. And so this idea started that, you know what, I'm going to dig in more to this concussion research and try to take a stab at changing the world's culture on concussions. When I heard about Chris Benoit, I was just certain, based on the way he wrestled, that he probably had CTE. CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It's a degenerative brain disease caused by repetitive hits to the head.
So as you can see here, they're describing a condition that they believed Chris Benoit to be diagnosed with, which was CTE. And basically, it just comes down to being hit consecutively in the head. Okay, it is part of the reason why in the NFL they don't allow helmet-to-helmet collisions. If you hit somebody helmet-to-helmet, you get a penalty, right? It's an immediate flag, and the team suffers a penalty because you're not allowed to hit the person in the head, helmet-to-helmet. In the WWE, in pro wrestling, more so in the WWE. I know other promotions have been trying to get away with it and work around the box a little bit, if you will, but more so in the WWE, they take being hit in the head with things like a steel chair very seriously. You are not allowed to hit pro wrestlers in the head with a steel chair in WWE. Why? Because it can result in concussions. It can result in CTE. You hit somebody with a steel chair in WWE in the head, your ass is getting fined. Realistically, you will be fined.
We see problems with emotion, behavior, disinhibition, aggression, and depression. And symptoms get worse over time as your brain is essentially rotting away. But in 2007, no one had ever heard of CTE. I saw Vince McMahon go on a Today Show and give his explanation for what he thought happened.
There was no way of telling this man was a monster.
He framed it as we didn't know what kind of monster Chris was. And I thought that it was the disease that was the monster. It wasn't Chris. So I ended up calling Chris's father, and he, through tears, agreed to let us study his brain.
A doctor who studied tissue from Benoit's brain says the wrestler suffered extensive brain damage from his years in the ring.
And they went on to say that Benoit's brain was the worst they'd ever seen.
We contacted World Wrestling Entertainment for a response. They sent along a statement saying the analysis that concussions might have led to Benoit's murderous rampage was speculative. It went on to say, we respect the desire of their father to do whatever he can to find some explanation.
This doctor came up with this ridiculous statement of, okay, here's why Chris Benoit did this. There was some sort of trauma to his head, and things were shown where Chris would dive off the rope and hit someone with his head. Benoit using his own head like a weapon. That's complete work. When somebody grabs your wrist real lightly and they twist it, I go, it hurts. Oh my God, you're killing me. That's the work. It looks like there's damage, and there's not. We know what we're doing. We don't hurt each other.
Meanwhile, they're showing every single example of Chris Benoit getting dropped directly on his fucking skull. Oh my God. Vince McMahon out here. We didn't hurt people. We knew what we were doing. We're all professionals. Some of the guys that Chris Benoit was working with was not professionals, okay? They were fucking still learning the ropes. They were fucking, not the greatest in-ring performers. Not as great as Chris Benoit. They're in there dropping him on his fucking head.
I worked for a long time. I got dropped on my head one time. I got concussed there.
And now they're talking about the example with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Steve Austin got hurt from a very great performer. Owen Hart performed a fucking pile driver and damn near almost broke Stone Cold's neck. Damn near could have killed the guy after the pile driver. And Owen Hart is a phenomenal fucking performer. So there you go. It can happen to anybody. Honestly, it comes with the territory. That's the sport of pro wrestling. All right? Expect to get hurt. But at least the fucking person that you're in the ring with can have the concern and the decency of looking out for your safety.
But other than that, I can't remember having too many concussions in the business of pro wrestling. And my take on that has always been, if you were just wrestling and you got a bunch of concussions, you're probably doing something wrong. I'm not a CTE guy. Just don't believe in it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the slides on Chris Benoit's brain. Like, he had CTE. Like, there's no question about that. CTE is a disease you can see very clearly under a microscope, but everybody has fought us on this. The NFL's fought us on this. The NHL is still fighting us on this. FIFA's fighting us. Everybody is trying to fight us. So I was actually surprised when I got a call from Vince McMahon saying he wanted to help.
Chris was knocking WWE.
I think there was something worth investigating.
I called him and said, what are you doing? I said, look, we'll help you out if you can come up with research that's honest. Because we would like to know more about it ourselves.
And that was the beginning of a wholesale change in their approach to this. They invited me in to come start teaching the wrestlers about what I knew about concussions and CTE.
There were a couple of in-ring moves that we stopped doing.
No more chair shots to the head.
We stopped hitting each other over the head with folding armchairs.
I have to admit, initially I was pissed. Like, how are you going to take away the chair shot? It's a staple of our industry.
Heads up, heads up.
I'm an old school guy. We use chairs to help tell our story. Vince made a call. Now there's no more chair shots to the head. I get it. The company is a publicly traded company now. When you're trying to market yourself to larger advertisers, the safety and well-being of your athletes and your performers is a priority. So it was, again, what was best for business.
Now, this is also a little bit of the reason why WWE doesn't do fucking ECW shit every single week, okay? You're not allowed to have Extreme Rules matches every week. You're not allowed to put people through fucking tables every week. Why? Because these are not action figures. At some point, somebody is going to get hurt. Somebody is going to break a bone. So, there's a lot of promotions. There's a lot of people who will look down on the extreme wrestling kind of style, or especially now like the deathmatch kind of style, the ultra violence kind of style. Me, obviously, I'm a big fan of ECW. I love the violent style, the extreme style. But unfortunately, in the WWE, that's not going to fly. Like they're saying, it's a business and it's a company where they're constantly trying to expand and they're constantly trying to get more partnerships and more brand deals, right? When I was growing up, we never had WWE 2K. 2K probably didn't want to fucking work with WWE when they were doing all the crazy shit that they were doing on TV every single week. And yeah, that shit was fun, but now it's a different time and it's a different day and age. It's modern day WWE where they're trying to fucking put as much money in everybody's pockets as possible. It's not just about doing cool shit on television. People are out here trying to make money. It's their job. It's their career.
Do you think the motivation is a care for wrestlers, or is it good for business or something?
I don't know which I couldn't tell you what the biggest motivation is, but it's an acknowledgement that it's better for wrestlers and it's good for business, right? And that's what's most important, is that all the interests align and they're doing the right thing.
What happened in the aftermath of the Chris Benoit situation is that there was really a lot of negative publicity.
It's not real, but the pain is. Professional wrestlers have suffered broken necks and spilled gallons of blood in the ring. Many turn to performance-enhancing drugs and painkillers as they spend 200-plus days on the road. And many don't make it past their 40th birthdays.
Wrestlers were dying young, and it was very often a combination of drugs and steroids. When wrestlers are dying, it didn't hurt the popularity of wrestling because the fans saw them as deaths of television characters. They didn't see it as like a husband.
Mr. Perfect died age 44. Eddie Guerrero died age 38.
He was 38 years old with 3 kids and a wife.
British Bulldog died at age 39.
And is dead.
Test died at age 33.
The fans knew these guys would die. But they didn't care. But they didn't seem to care. Give us the next guy.
At first, Vince McMahon was totally defiant, like he's always going to be. All the deaths, he would go, this has nothing to do with us, it's their choice.
Do you have a reason why these people would be dying under the age of 45?
Are you indicating that's my responsibility? These people are dead because...
I'm asking you if it's in any way, shape, or form falls on your shoulders.
So I was set to have this interview with the award-winning Armin Katana. And when someone comes at me, whether it's a member of the media or otherwise, I can't help but be defensive.
I know one of the female wrestlers too. Ashley died very young. Tragic. I do have to just go upstairs real quick, guys. We're going to take about a 1.5, 2 minute break, and then we will be right back. But I do have to just take a quick journey upstairs and have a conversation with my mom. So we will have to do like a 1.5, 2 minute break here. I will be right back. Grab yourself a snack, maybe a drink. Sipping on some Monster Juice myself. We got the Aussie Lemonade. We'll be right back. All right, chat. I am back. My apologies. You see the fit check here? Turn on the light real quick. You guys can see the outfit. Michael Myers shirt. There it is. We are back. My apologies for the inconvenience. Just had to have a quick conversation with my mom about some stuff. But we have returned, and we will continue with the watch-along here. Episode 6, final episode of Mr. McMahon on Netflix, the documentary.
When someone comes at me, whether it's a member of the media or otherwise, I can't help but be defensive and then be offensive. I would accept no responsibility whatsoever for their untimely deaths, none whatsoever. As far as, and you've got that little look on your face like, geez, Vince, how can you possibly say that?
Well, but none whatsoever. I mean, they wrestled for you. They were part of your organization. They worked a couple of hundred nights a year for you. They lived this lifestyle.
Oh my God, you can't believe, can you see that look? I mean, how can you possibly say that, Vince? When you look back at just about all of those performers who passed away, they use these prescription drugs as recreation. Many of them just took these pills because it made them feel good, and when you mix that with steroids or something else that's an upward, your heart doesn't know which way to go. And it's a horrible cocktail. And that's what happened.
Found dead in their hotel room. That was the typical scenario. Why isn't these things page 1? Millions of kids worship these guys, and they're dropping dead. Where's the news? And again, McMahon seemed to escape that.
They did get their bad publicity off of it, but not that much. Because people will just go, we don't want to waste our time, investigating this fake thing. But as far as WWE goes, was this kind of a turning point? In hindsight, I would say yes. That did lead to a lot of major changes in wrestling. More vigilant monitoring of concussions, more vigilant monitoring of drug abuse. They agreed to pay for rehab to anyone under contract, even after they're gone with the company. The schedule was reduced, instead of going 10 days on and 3 days off, it was 4 days on and 3 days off. And it's even better now. The changes have been gigantic.
So this is WrestleMania 30, 2014.
WrestleMania 30. Up until that point, I'd never lost at WrestleMania. I think I was 21-0. The streak is a huge part of the attraction of WrestleMania.
The amazing undefeated streak continues.
So I was going to win. The streak was going to stay intact.
So obviously now they're talking about the night The Undertaker lost at WrestleMania and the streak was finally defeated. Now the one thing I do want to add to this current topic that we're going to talk about and that we're going to see here, the Undertaker and the WrestleMania streak was never a real storyline at first, okay? Undertaker would just get booked to have a match at WrestleMania, and I think around like WrestleMania 8 or 9, they started, well, not 8 or 9, but once he was 9-0, 8-0, they started to realize, hey, the Undertaker's never been defeated at WrestleMania. And that's when it became a storyline. Okay, it was never intentional. It was never something that was supposed to make WrestleMania special or unique. But once The Undertaker kind of had an 8-0 streak or a 9-0 streak at WrestleMania, they looked at that and they said, hey, we can turn this into a storyline. So it went all the way up to WrestleMania 30. And I will admit, growing up, it was something that you looked forward to. Who would have a match at WrestleMania with The Undertaker? Is somebody going to be able to defeat the streak? I remember saying, me and my friends, we'll talk about it. We used to think years ago that John Cena would have been the guy to do it or something like that. And then they had the match with Cena and The Undertaker years later after WrestleMania 30. But that is nowhere, what it could have been when I was actually growing up. But it was something that made WrestleMania kind of the thing to watch, okay? Like, who is going to be the challenge for The Undertaker, and can this person actually defeat the streak? Obviously, they gave it to Brock Lesnar, and then later they felt like we should probably let Roman get a win. Which Roman definitely, like, from a company perspective, it definitely makes more sense to give it to Roman over Brock. Brock Lesnar technically has always had a one-up on The Undertaker in their story and their rivalry. The Undertaker has never really been able to defeat Brock Lesnar all like that. I think he did once at like a SummerSlam or something. But technically, all throughout the history of Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker, it's always pretty much gone to Brock Lesnar. So WrestleMania 30, that's kind of, they kind of just decided, hey, it's probably best if we give it to Brock because Brock is going to be here for a little bit, and they wanted to make his character more impactful.
But that day, Vince walks in my dressing room, and he said, Mark, I think we're going to put Brock over tonight.
Brock Lesnar! It was a last-minute decision. Mark wasn't prepared for it. I think he was in some sort of a psychological shock.
About 5-10 minutes into that match, I get concussed. The match went on 25 minutes or so, but I can't to this day recall being in that match.
Looking back on it, I don't see where Mark was concussed. Could have happened, but I think Mark just didn't remember any of that because it was so traumatic for him.
They took me to the hospital, and Vince left WrestleMania to go to the hospital. He was there with my wife, consoling her.
You cannot hurt The Undertaker!
I never thought about getting hurt. Even after I got hurt, I didn't think about getting hurt. Only thing you think about is getting well so you can get back to work. I've had 18 different surgeries. I walk with a limp. I wake up some mornings and can't get out of bed. But there's nothing that I would change. I love it. And if I could still do it, I'd still be doing it.
We love you, Undertaker. Mark Calloway, ladies and gentlemen, a true pioneer, a true cowboy for the WWE. He was my dad's favorite wrestler. And he's certainly one of my favorite wrestlers of all time as well. I remember watching the documentary that they did on Undertaker as well not too long ago, and that was a very awesome documentary if you ever get to check it out. I believe it's on Peacock, so go watch that if you ever get to. I think it's called The Last Ride, but it's a great documentary featuring The Undertaker and everything that was kind of leading up to the end of his career. But I definitely miss The Undertaker a lot. I'm somebody who actually got to see him perform and actually got to, watch a lot of the storylines that he was involved with. My brother more so than me because, Undertaker, I think debuted at around, 91, 92. So, my brother definitely got to grow up with him a little bit more. I, of course, knew more of like the Attitude Era and the American Badass version. I got to see a lot of that. And then further from that, but it was honestly always amazing to see how The Undertaker could keep that character alive and just how serious he would take his character. They say to this day, if you would have gave The Undertaker to any other wrestler, it probably would have never got over, probably would have never been successful. Mark Calloway made it work. All right. He always found a way to reinvent the character and always keep The Undertaker true in the fans of the pro wrestling viewers' eyes.
We as, the wrestlers sometimes think we're indestructible. That's just the way it is. It's just part of who we are. But on the other hand, this next generation of wrestlers, I do not want to see them in the same situation as a bunch of the guys that came before them.
come into WWE in 2007, they were spinning out of Chris Benoit's terrible tragedy. And out of that, the wellness policy really becomes a huge part of the company.
First, we're instituting a new drug policy.
Behind the scenes, I came into a very clean WWE. And it was also very clean on air in terms of we're heading towards the TV PG era.
There you go, the TV PG era. It's always some kind of fucking era. Like I said, I don't really like to describe them as eras. The only era for me is the Attitude Era, because that was an actual true era. The Monday Night Wars was a very real thing. You don't get a lot of that today. Modern day WWE, modern day pro wrestling. So the Attitude Era was very real to me. But like I said, I look at it more of like who was the most dominant champion for the company in that era, right? The Hulk Hogan era, the Shawn Michaels and the Bret Hart era, the Stone Cold Steve Austin era with The Rock, the Triple H era, okay? The Brock Lesnar era, the John Cena era, the Randy Orton era, the CM Punk era, the Bryan Danielson era, the Shield era, the Roman Reigns era, and probably also the Brock Lesnar era. Now they want to describe it probably like the Cody Rhodes era, but for me, it's still the Roman Reigns era.
What motivated Vince to switch the rating from TV 14 to TV PG was the 50,000-foot perspective of advertisers, the lewd and kind of really out there angles that were going on in the Ruthless Aggression era. We're going to cut it with sponsors.
Okay, here are the stats.
And Vince is a businessman. He's the chairman of the board. He wants to make the company as much money as possible.
Vince was trying to reach bigger, get more families, more kids. We made that turn, and it has paid off. Literally and figuratively in dividends.
The stock shot up eventually, and sponsorship deals became, much more lucrative. But a lot of your Attitude Era Ruthless Aggression audiences would be like, this is the Muppet Show. It literally was the Muppet Show. We had the Muppets guest host one time.
We had the Muppets guest host one time. Yeah. So here's the problem, right? After they've kind of appealed to all of these more mature audiences, like when they did with the Attitude Era, and you could say the Ruthless Aggression Era, the problem with that is some of those people were still fans, right? They were still watching the product going into like 2019, 2020 is probably when they really started to like do a real big change in direction. So you still had a lot of the fans from the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era kind of tuning in for more of that mature, more of that violent kind of nature of pro wrestling. And it just wasn't fucking there, man. I mean, it was the shits. It was a fucking Muppet Show. And they literally said, we had the Muppets guest host one time. Like, but like I said, Vince McMahon, he's the owner, he's the boss, and he wants to put money in everybody's pocket. So he's going to make the decision he feels is necessary.
All those things that led WWE to be your special secret guilty pleasure now was being taken away, and that left a bad taste in people's mouths.
I do what's right for each and every one of you from a business perspective, long-term oriented, and you don't even understand what I'm doing. But in time, you will.
When the decision was made to go PG, certain fans would complain on social media, but times change, and views change, and you adapt with it. So they tone down. The timing of the women's evolution coincided with the PG era shift. The portrayal of women in the industry was progressing and maturing.
It is the perfect combination of beauty and power.
And the capabilities of the women that were coming into the industry were certainly far more athletic than those that preceded them.
The women's evolution was really a movement started by our fans.
Fans took to social media with the hashtag #GiveDivas_a_chance, upset over unequal screen time for female wrestlers.
Vince was pretty set in his ways by this point, so it was very hard for him to change.
I think Vince was not sure, but ultimately Vince is about giving the fans what they want. And when the fans wanted us to do more action in the ring and they liked what they were getting from us, he went with it. Someone that got really behind us was Stephanie. You know, Stephanie saw us doing our thing out there and she really pushed for the women to take it to another level.
Stephanie McMahon had been a television character for a long, long time, but behind the scenes, she became kind of like a public face of the company, chief brand officer, you know, so that was her role. And Paul Levesque, Triple H, was getting more and more influence on the creative side, helping Vince, you know, kind of like number two.
Where was Shane at that point?
Shane was kind of out, you know, for the most part.
So 2016, I was gone 6 or 7 years at that point. You know, off camera, off everything. And got a call. It's my dad. And he says, hey, I have an idea. I was like, okay. At the time, there was a storyline where my dad was going to give a very big accolade from my grandfather to my sister, who was completely undeserving storyline-wise.
No one in the world deserves this award as much as you.
And then all of a sudden, my music hits. The place goes crazy, and still to this day, you know, I'm getting goosebumps under my jacket right now thinking about it.
Now, we did talk about on the previous Watch Along, episode 5 of the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix. I've always said it before as well. You know, if anybody was going to take over after Vince McMahon even said it himself, it was most likely going to be Stephanie McMahon, okay? Out of all his children, would it be Stephanie McMahon? Would it be Shane McMahon? He felt more comfortable always giving it to Stephanie McMahon because Stephanie was always really in tune and really a working gear with the company always. Obviously, Paul Levesque, Triple H, is married to Stephanie McMahon, so it's still a family business. Shane McMahon, on the other hand, we talked about it last episode. Him and his father, Vince, never seen eye to eye creatively. They didn't get along on a lot of the things that they wanted to do with the stories, a lot of the decision-making. Shane McMahon did want to be the next great McMahon promoter. He did want to take over the company after his father, Vince. But once him and his dad really couldn't get along all that much, Shane McMahon was always kind of in and out of the business. And he has been, you know, kind of in and out throughout his entire career with WWE. And that's also part of the reason why it's better to give it to Stephanie, because like I said, Stephanie has always been there for the WWE, as well as Paul Levesque, Triple H. Triple H is a fucking former wrestler, so obviously he knows how to treat the talent and try to make the right kind of moves happen, the right kind of decisions. But I do believe now Shane McMahon is in partnership with AEW, All Elite Wrestling. So that'll be interesting to see, right? Stephanie McMahon and Paul Levesque, the McMahon family in WWE versus Shane McMahon and Tony Khan over at AEW. It sounds like an interesting story to me, chat.
It was so rewarding to have an adulation that long and that loud when you return to something you love. I see my dad looking at me, and then he has pride. I could see it in his eyes. Now I'm getting choked up looking at that. My sister, she's starting to tear up because, again, we're all back together. It was a huge moment. And eventually what came out was something really cool.
You and your husband, Triple H, have been really running this company into the ground. I want control of Monday Night Raw.
And then that led to my dad making a match.
One match, one night, an opponent of my choosing, I'll tell you where and when and who. So, what about it, Shane-O? Huh? Everybody's happy to see Shane-O back. You got your match. You're on. Good, because I have one last opportunity to have a fucking beating, okay? Beating by the face. And the place and the time is going to be WrestleMania. And your opponent, The Undertaker. Welcome back, Shane-O. And getting to that moment now of WrestleMania 32.
Here comes the money.
I've been in the ring 7 years. And you can imagine walking out in not just a small room, but a stadium with a sea of people. That's euphoric. But the greatest thing was about 10 minutes prior to me going out, my boys were backstage and I was like, you guys want to come out with me? It's like, what? I'm like, are you serious?
And look at us out here with Shane-O back.
My boys were doing my stuff and they're doing the arm twist. I go, look at these little dudes. And then I have to snap out of this because I'm about to throw her down with one of the best of them ever. The Undertaker's all hits and the place goes bonkers. And the rest is history.
I can only imagine being the son of Vince McMahon. It seemed like Shane was always trying to prove something to his dad all the time, even if it meant doing some of the most death-defying, feats we've seen in this business.
Shane McMahon has got Kurt Angle in a bad way here.
Obviously, when you're performing, you want that adulation that you did a good job, especially, from my father. And I think that's why I've always just tried to do a little bit extra, in the ring. One time, I had a match with Kurt Angle. It's more of a hardcore match. Kurt was famous, being Olympian, for suplexes. He picked me up and suplexed me.
Dropped him right on his head.
I hit that glass, it was like, straight down to my noggin.
Now, I remember seeing this King of the Ring very specifically. I believe this was like King of the Ring 2001, 2002. It was the one where Brock Lesnar won and he became the King of the Ring. But again, I grew up during this era. I remember watching all this live. Shane McMahon and Kurt Angle, they're having a hardcore match. I also got to meet Kurt Angle. I got a picture with him. This is when Kurt Angle was with TNA Impact. But I still have that picture to this day. Kurt Angle, awesome guy. Olympian wrestler. So one of my favorites to definitely get a picture with and get the chance to meet. But this night at King of the Ring, like I said, around 2001, 2002, Shane O'Mac and Kurt Angle are having a hardcore match. During the match, they go outside of the ring. There's like these glass doors set up where the entrance is, okay? And it kind of reminds me a lot of like the Judgment Day era back in like the 2000s. But they had like these glass doors, and Kurt Angle, he's a suplex machine, gets Shane in his arms, throws him back. Shane hits the panel of the glass, doesn't break it, lands right on top of his fucking skull. And then he actually got back up and they did the move again because they felt like they botched it probably in real life. But you got to give credit to Shane for like just putting his body to the highest limits that he could possibly take it.
I was like, oh, you Olympic wuss. I said, I can't believe you came and throw me through that thing. You suck. All of a sudden he was going,
and then he throws him through it.
And then it took 3 going out. Suplex 1, hit the glass, didn't do anything.
Oh, yeah, man. They the first time, again, the glass panel doesn't break. The second time they do it, it breaks, okay? Now they're behind another glass panel, And same thing. Kurt Angle goes for the suplex, belly to belly. Shane hits the fucking glass panel, doesn't break it. So that's the second time that it doesn't break. This is the third time they're trying that same move in the same match. The fourth time, he fucking does it again.
Second one, same thing. And then finally, Kurt threw me through the third one.
I fell for Shane that night. He took it like a champ.
Fucking Kurt Angle just had enough of the glass panel. He just throws Shane McMahon right through the fucking sucker.
Just trying to prove something to his dad. I think Shane wanted to be different. He wanted to earn his stripes, so to speak, in every way. He would take chances that no one else would take. And he did some crazy, crazy things that no one else would do. He knew that that was something that was his.
I do some risky things. But, you know, if it's in your blood, in my view, it's an acceptable risk.
Shane, what are you doing?
I've done it happily to entertain and to push myself as well. And of course, always looking for that pat on the back from my dad.
Shane is climbing to the top of Hell in a Cell. Shane is standing in Hell in a Cell.
How much does your legacy mean to you, Shane? Yes. Not this, please.
Shane, don't do that. No. Shane, no. I know that he's always wanted me to respect him and things of that nature. I don't know that there aren't many pats on the shoulder and some way to go. You know, maybe there should have been, you know. My dad, he never said it to me, and that's okay. But I've always been proud of Shane for what he's done, what he attempts to do, because he gives it his all.
I mean, if there's one thing that we can say about Shane McMahon, he definitely cares about entertaining and sending all the people home happy who paid for a ticket. You know, that is the one thing that we can say about Shane McMahon. He has always cared about the fans, and he always wants to send them home happy, with something to talk about. Hey, did you see that crazy thing tonight? Were you at the arena when they did this? You know what I mean?
I was very proud for Shane in that match.
Do you remember seeing your dad after? I got a hug that night. Yeah, got a hug that night. It was a very emotional return.
Shane got emotional and said, "That's all I ever wanted was your respect." So that was a very personal moment.
I got a pat on the back and a hug. Yeah. Got that one. Was that hard to come by? Very. Had to earn that one. Guess I did.
You hear people say this a lot in our business about Vince, like he was almost like a father to me. We have a family. Not the McMahon family. We have a much broader family. And in terms of a family type thing, I'm the patriarch.
He's had the role in my life of a father figure.
Our relationship, he was like a father figure to me.
I have a fatherly father-son relationship with Vince. I mean, I'd honestly take a bullet for that man.
There's no doubt that Vince is the father figure of the company. And all the stars in WWE are desperate for Vince's approval, including his own kids. You know, if you look at Shane, when he came back, he was only really being used as in-ring talent. But it seemed like he was trying to work his way back into Vince's good graces, into a potential role as a successor in WWE.
At some point, did I envision myself being next in line to do certain things? Sure, from the standpoint of I just wanted to continue the family business.
I came back to ensure the future, not only for my kids,
but for your daughters and eventually their kids and their kids' kids, etc., etc. That's why I returned to the WWE.
He wanted to be the next McMahon, and he always figured he would be. And then it didn't happen. You know, most people will say it was because Stephanie was better at it than he was.
The one thing that Shane does have over me is likability. But business is not run by popularity, and I'm just glad.
Stephanie, she's just like her dad. She's very strong. Shane is nice. And in the wrestling world, if you're a boss and you're nice, once the people see that niceness, they will try to take advantage of you. With Stephanie, you know you can't take advantage of that woman. You just know right off the bat.
You don't know what it means to be a success, Shane. How would you? You're nothing more than a quitter. Now get the hell out of my ring.
Through the 2010s and leading up to the 2020s, Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, and Triple H were the three most powerful people inside WWE. And there were a lot of huge successes during this period of time. There was the WWE Network,
24/7 streaming service, live content,
which was revolutionary in its way. They were on the cutting edge of a lot of social media stuff. The TV rights deals were going up and up, which culminated in the giant deal with Peacock. Linda McMahon joins Donald Trump's cabinet, heading the Small Business Administration.
Linda McMahon is in fucking Donald Trump's cabinet. There you go. The McMahons and Trump have always kind of been friends with each other.
There was a competition started up in 2019. AEW Wrestling launched.
Wow, they're actually talking about All Elite Wrestling too during this documentary. Crazy that they even gave AEW a mention, considering this has been all WWE straight up to this point. Well, obviously besides like WCW and ECW, but WWE owns the rights to those. AEW getting a mention here on episode 6 of the McMahon documentary. Let's fucking go.
The big stars and vice presidents was Cody Rhodes, who 3 years later came back to WWE. And the stock price just kept going up and up. It certainly doesn't have the energy or the vitality that it seemed to in the 80s, and especially not during the Attitude Era. But Vince, he keeps creating new stars who become huge faces of the company.
This man, Roman Reigns, has become a mainstream star. Roman Reigns, everybody!
Because of the success during this period of time, it was hard to imagine Vince ever stepping down, but if he were ever going to leave, it seemed clear at the time that it was Stephanie McMahon and Triple H who were in position to succeed him in running the company.
I think as far as succession, you don't rule out Shane or Stephanie, obviously. But it was my understanding that Hunter was supposed to be the individual. I don't know, that's the upper level stuff that I couldn't even imagine.
There are a lot of plans in terms of succession, but it depends on where I am in terms of the ability to contribute.
Welcome to night 2 of WrestleMania, 70,000 plus once again.
Now WrestleMania 38.
You ever see yourself taking a step back?
Taking a step back? Do I ever see myself retiring? No, I don't see myself ever retiring. I never understood why people stop growing. When you stop growing, you die. Some people are, I want to retire one day. What are you going to do when you retire? I have, no sympathy for people like that. Go die.
This is ridiculous. Mr. McMahon has entered the ring.
Think you'll ever retire?
No. Vince will never retire.
Do I think Vince will ever stop? No.
I don't think he'll ever stop because he loves it. It's not work to him.
I can't believe McMahon and Austin are toasting at WrestleMania. They finally way too soon. Mr. McMahon trying to get away, but Austin stops McMahon.
I cannot imagine
Vince McMahon selling one of the worst stunners of all time from Steve Austin that night.
a life with Vince McMahon not being the main dude in the WWE as long as he has breath in his lungs.
What I think it would take for Vince to retire, a nuclear bomb exploding.
Now, June of 2022.
Wrestling world rocked by the headline hitting today that WWE founder and CEO Vince McMahon is stepping down as chairman and CEO.
The Wall Street Journal reporting McMahon paid a former employee who he allegedly had an affair with $3 million to keep her quiet.
It started with a tip, and the tip was that the board of WWE had received an anonymous email alleging that Vince McMahon had basically kept quiet an affair with an employee of the company, and then covered it up.
The Journal reports, according to an email sent to WWE board members, McMahon initially hired the woman at a salary of $100,000, but increased it to $200,000 after beginning a sexual relationship with her.
The person who wrote the email portrayed it as a relationship where McMahon was taking advantage of someone and was conducting a consensual affair, but the power was clearly with the guy who was the CEO.
How consensual is it when it's your boss? There's always that boss power, especially when it's Vince.
The separation agreement prevents the former employee from discussing her relationship with Mr. McMahon or disparaging him in any way.
Beyond the NDAs themselves, we encountered this kind of culture of secrecy. Vince McMahon exerts such power, he has such influence over people's careers that people are very reluctant to speak because they were afraid of retaliation.
My expectation was Vince was going to just go after those reporters. Because if he had any kind of defense, he'd have gone after the reporter's credibility, and he never touched him. That shocked me. That is not Vince.
McMahon says in part, I've pledged my complete cooperation to the investigation by the special committee, and I will do everything possible to support the investigation.
He is staying in front of the cameras. He's expected to be on SmackDown later on tonight. Jake?
Of course he is.
Vince resigned as CEO, but continued on the board of directors and continued to run creative. When the first story came out, they announced Vince will be on the air. Welcome to SmackDown. It was just basically his F you at the story, and they did, one of their biggest ratings of the year. Everybody cheered like crazy.
After the allegations became public, Vince McMahon canceled his final interviews for this series. Still 25 minutes left in the episode.
When we published the first article, one of the reactions from some quarters was, well, what did you expect? Vince's public persona, the Mr. McMahon character, was intentionally outrageous. And tied up in all of that was this notion that he was just rapacious and sexually deviant and couldn't control himself. And that was a huge part of the public character. What complicates that is that this was this intentional blurring of fictional and non-fictional.
You're hired, Stacy!
What we have shown is that some of what was played for laughs as part of the character was not that funny and was, in fact, very, very serious.
As we got into the reporting, we found there had been other allegations that surfaced over the years against McMahon. In 2006, there was a woman who worked at a tanning salon, and she alleged that Vince McMahon had shown her naked photos of himself and had groped her. McMahon denies the allegations, and prosecutors decided not to move forward with anything because they didn't think that there was enough independent evidence.
tanning salon thing came, weeks later, Vince created a storyline where somebody's just absolutely making up all of these things.
The reporting built on itself after that first story. The more sort of we reported, the more started coming in.
3 weeks ago, Vince McMahon stepped down as WWE CEO following allegations of sexual misconduct. It turns out now there's a lot more to the story.
Vince McMahon reportedly agreeing to pay $12 million to 4 different women over a 16-year period, according to the Wall Street Journal. The deals were made to suppress allegations of sexual misconduct.
$12 million in hush money to 4 women over a 16-year period.
Some of those allegations were, frankly, more serious. The most serious one is we learned of a settlement for $7.5 million that McMahon struck with a former wrestler who alleged that he had coerced her into oral sex, that she had refused his further advances, and he had not renewed her contract.
Vince was always the guy who you always figured would survive, everything. And then it's like a week or two later, all of a sudden it's Friday and Vince has retired. They made the announcement on a Friday because to the end, they thought that it would build ratings for Friday night. So they do it Friday afternoon. So Stephanie McMahon opens the show.
Earlier tonight, my father, Vince McMahon, retired from WWE.
So she finishes her short speech of, he wrote his life, did this and that, and then let's go. Thank you, Vince. And she's cheering everyone. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Vince.
It was exactly what I expected. But it was kind of a shock and weird and surreal only because for 40 years, Vince had been running that company. And all of a sudden in one day, it's all changed.
The reaction in the locker room was uncertainty for sure, but real chaos in a sense that what does WWE look like without Vince?
As far as what I originally thought would happen if Vince was gone, I thought that Stephanie would be the face of the company, and I thought Paul Levesque would be running the great event. And that's essentially what happened.
You think the business can survive without him?
Honestly, without Vince, I don't think it will.
Now that he's retired, I think there was great pleasure in seeing him get what's coming to him. But 5 minutes later, do we care? I don't know how much. I think we'd be more interested to see him come back. I think we'd be much more entertained by that.
Now, obviously, the WWE can survive without Vince McMahon. Like I said, they've always been a family business at heart. Vince McMahon passed it down to Stephanie McMahon and his son-in-law, Paul Levesque, Triple H, who was married to Stephanie. And if you honestly look at it in the perspective today, you have Triple H making deals and making things happen with the UFC. Okay? You have The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's now a part owner of the company as well. His daughter Ava is the general manager on NXT. And they also have Shawn Michaels working a lot with the NXT talent as well. So Triple H has obviously incorporated a lot of his buddies over the year as well. The Rock, Shawn Michaels. You kind of expect John Cena to be a part owner at some point or have some kind of ownership with the company down the line as well. For me, at least, I kind of see that happening. But the WWE can certainly survive without Vince McMahon.
Because nobody does evil like Vince McMahon. He still generates heat. And heat is what sells tickets.
Do you see Vince coming back?
Because it's wrestling and everything. I would say yes.
January 2023.
Wrestling Entertainment, the majority owner, Vince McMahon, has returned to WWE as executive chairman. Meantime, Vince McMahon's daughter, Stephanie McMahon, has resigned as co-CEO of WWE. Many on Wall Street expect McMahon to try to sell the $6 billion company at some point.
What was your reaction when Vince returned?
Wow, that I mean, it was weird.
When Vince came back, I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that people were surprised.
I had definitely heard for a couple of weeks that Vince was getting itchy and wanted to come back. And I didn't know if he would be able to. Because I had already known about the board voting unanimously for him not to be back. But he did have the controlling votes. So he returned, he changed members of the board, and then days later, Stephanie resigns.
Stephanie McMahon making a statement via Twitter, WWE is in such a strong position that I have decided to return to my lead and take it one step further with my official resignation.
Vince said that he thought he never should have quit, but he was talked into quitting. And he said that it was by somebody close to him. So, you can draw a conclusion from that.
Vince sort of forced his way back in. And it seems to me that Stephanie didn't want anything to do with the company if Vince was going to be involved. I don't think she was forcing it.
Sure feels that way.
Come on.
I have absolutely no idea what happened with Stephanie leaving the company. And Dave Meltzer or Shoemaker or whoever else wants to make up their lies and their assumptions. They don't know.
When Vince came back, the first thing they talked about was a potential sale. This was like, okay, we're taking bids.
It is now a
WWE sells to Endeavor, creating a $21 billion powerhouse. A $21 billion powerhouse. WWE sells to Endeavor.
official. Endeavor announcing WWE and UFC will combine to form.
So WWE and UFC are now combined into a $21 billion conglomerate, a juggernaut, probably worth even more today.
A $21 billion global live sports and entertainment company.
The combined WWE and UFC will be called the TKO Group.
Selling the company to a strategic company like Endeavor, I thought was genius. Think about it. It's a new challenge for Vince. He's not just overseeing one company, he's overseeing another company.
I think the idea probably was to sell it in a way where Vince would still have the major say-so.
Vince is going to be the executive chairman, but it's going to be a little bit different for him because WWE shareholders only get 49% of this company versus Endeavor shareholders who get 51%. So he no longer has the absolute control that he did over WWE.
This company's been in your family for 70 years. Is it a tough day?
No, it's a great day. You know, things have to evolve. Family, business, it all has to evolve for all the right reasons. And this is the right business decision. Thus far, it's the right family decision. There wasn't going to be, the next generation Vince McMahon. It got too big to be a family business. It had to be something where experts in the big business field were going to be making a lot of the decisions. It's not about the last name. It's not about a family legacy. It's about who is best qualified. We live by the law of the jungle. And the lion who still rules this kingdom wouldn't have it any other way. The company's doing really strong right now. The attendance is the best it's been since 2002.
More people watch the big events than have ever watched them before. Sponsorship is way beyond anything they've ever had before. Profits are the biggest they've ever been. Revenue is the biggest they've ever been. People will support entertainment product and not care about the moral fiber of the guy running the product. They want entertainment.
This week, World Wrestling Entertainment agreeing to a $5 billion 10-year deal to take its signature weekly wrestling show, Raw, to Netflix.
Now, I have said myself, right now I'm in a little bit of a stalemate with the WWE right now because I just don't enjoy a lot of the storylines and a lot of the creative writing that has been happening right now. Again, this is October 4th, 2024. I have said personally I am going to get back into the groove of things around January, right around when the Royal Rumble starts up, and we can be on the road to WrestleMania again, another road to WrestleMania season. And also in January, WWE Monday Night Raw is going to finally have the Netflix deal going, so I'm interested to see how that goes, to see how things change for that. I'm also hoping right around the road to WrestleMania, we can do more watch-alongs again. So like for the Royal Rumble, probably even Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania 41, which is going to be in Las Vegas. I really want to include a lot of that on the channel in the upcoming year for 2025. And we'll try to see what we can do with Monday Night Raw on Netflix. Like I said, I'm really interested to see how things go for that.
You saw some episodes of this show?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Thought they sucked. I didn't think it was balanced at all. I thought it was a gotcha piece.
Now, Bruce Pritchard is only saying that because he was Vince McMahon's sidekick for years in the fucking writing department and trying to come up with storylines. Bruce Pritchard is more on the sidelines now. He's not so involved in the years 2024, especially. If anything, I've actually heard that Triple H now is doing a lot of the storylines and a lot of the creative writing for Monday Night Raw, and Paul Heyman is actually more of the creative and doing a lot of the writing for like SmackDown. So again, like I said, we have Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, Paul Levesque as the owners of the company now, alongside UFC, the TKO group, WWE and UFC, the Juggernaut. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is an owner as well. We have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's daughter Ava on NXT, and also Shawn Michaels, the general manager, helping a lot of the young talent of the future for the WWE, their own personal little training camp down there in NXT. Ava and Shawn Michaels. And then on Monday Night Raw, you have Triple H doing a lot of the creative now, a lot of the writing. And on SmackDown, you have Paul Heyman do a lot of the creative and a lot of the writing. So I think Bruce Pritchard kind of has a lot of thorns in his side because he's not so involved anymore. And again, he was Vince's sidekick for a lot of years. But to be honest, I didn't care for Bruce Pritchard's kind of style of writing and shit he was getting away with for years either. I mean, like they said, there were times after the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression era that the product just absolutely sucked. So Bruce Pritchard, he's not like the greatest in my eyes either.
I thought it was portrayed as a gotcha piece. And it was all about how can we make Vince look bad? Let's make him look shitty here. Let's make him look shitty there. I'm close to it. I live it. And it's personal to me.
Is there something about Vince that we're missing?
Yeah, the human side. Look, Vince is a businessman. But also the other side of Vince is when my wife got cancer, that Vince made sure that she had the best care in the world. My wife was given a 4-year life expectancy. Best case scenario. That was 24 years ago. And that was because Vince McMahon made sure that she got the best care that was available. It wasn't a documentary on Vince and Vince's life and Vince's story. It was, let's see what an asshole Vince McMahon is. Let's see how big of an asshole we can make him. And if he were one, I would support that. But he's not.
The
2 days
founder
later.
and former CEO of World Wrestling Entertainment is facing new accusations of sexual assault and trafficking tonight.
A disturbing new lawsuit is alleging that Vince McMahon sexually abused and trafficked a former employee.
A source tipped me off about the lawsuit being filed, and that happens because of the topic of the suit. I've written about sex trafficking suits or sexual misconduct. I did not get the sense from people at WWE that they knew the lawsuit was coming. In fact, I heard from sources that they were surprised.
In the lawsuit, Janelle Grant, who worked there up until March 2022, says McMahon forced her to have sex with him and other men at the WWE headquarters in return for job security.
Jesus.
Janelle Grant was the woman who we first reported on back in 2022. And what Grant says in this lawsuit is that it was not a consensual affair.
The lawsuit paints a picture of sexual abuse, sexual misconduct. She says she was sexually assaulted, that she was lured there on the promise of career advancement, and then eventually exploited sexually and then trafficked to other men by Vince McMahon.
Jesus, Vince.
When that lawsuit came out, honestly, I didn't think that there was anything that could be in there that would shock me, and I was floored. I mean, just absolutely stunned.
Grant's claims include sexual acts involving defecation, restraint.
Grant alleges that he assaulted her with sex toys named after male wrestlers.
One of the most striking things about this particular lawsuit was the fact that Janelle Grant had reproduced text messages that she had received from Vince McMahon.
The suit included screenshots of vulgar text that McMahon allegedly sent to Grant, becoming more graphic, dark, and sadistic. "I'm the only one who owns you," one of the messages read, "and controls who I want to blank you."
You know, granted, we're only seeing her side of these text messages, or the text message she wants to see, and maybe we'll see more in the future. But it just gave such a window into this relationship that,
Now, this is a text message that they're showing from Vince McMahon. I just wanted to read it real quick before I fucking said anything out loud. But it says, "Here's what Blank said after I told him that part of the deal was fucking you. LOL, that's your turf. She will be ruined after me and leave your ass. Plus, after me, your tool won't fit anymore." And then the next text is just a line of laughing emojis. But that is a text apparently from Vince McMahon.
often don't see, especially in relationships with this power imbalance.
This is one of the most brazen examples in a company setting that I've seen where an executive isn't really taking a lot of steps to hide the behavior.
The lawsuit also accuses McMahon of sharing sexually explicit photos of Grant with other WWE employees, including an unnamed wrestler who the company was trying to re-sign in 2021 without her consent.
We found out from sources that the identity is Brock Lesnar, which is one of WWE's biggest names. She alleges that McMahon shared the explicit photos with him and informed her that he likes what he sees. After the star agreed to a new contract, McMahon told her that sex acts with her were part of the deal.
In a statement, Vince McMahon's spokesperson says this lawsuit is bringing up instances that never occurred and a vindictive distortion of the truth. He will vigorously defend himself.
WWE's parent company, TKO Group, says it's taking these allegations seriously and addressing the matter internally.
One day after Janelle Grant's lawsuit is filed,
WWE founder Vince McMahon has resigned as executive chairman of the wrestling company's parent organization. McMahon has denied the allegations, but says he's now resigning, quote, out of respect for the WWE universe.
The fact that he resigns the day after the lawsuit is filed suggests that things have changed. He's in a new company. He no longer has the same control. And if someone asks him to leave, he's got to leave.
At that point, Vince was fully pushed out of any role in TKO or WWE. And after the Janelle Grant accusations, You start hearing rumors and accusations from a variety of sources. In 2016, Ashley Massaro claimed that she had been raped.
Now, I loved Ashley. This is another sad thing to talk about during this episode, but I do believe Ashley actually committed suicide. Ashley Massaro, who at once upon a time was a female talent with the WWE. She basically came up around my era, 2005, 2006, and so on. Around 2016, she filed a lawsuit stating that she was raped, and it was actually during a Tribute to the Troops campaign, which, you know, Tribute to the Troops is one of my favorite specials that WWE does. They usually do it around every Christmas, and they'll go to actual military bases, so like Afghanistan, Iraq, Baghdad, things of that nature, and they'll perform a Christmas special for the troops in attendance. And that was like one of my favorite things that WWE would do every year. Unfortunately, when Ashley Massaro was on the tour with WWE, going to the military bases, she was sexually harassed, and she was, in her statement, she was raped. Again, I don't know how true that is. All I can tell you is that I am very sad, and it is very depressing to hear what happened to Ashley with her time in the company. Obviously, they put her on Playboy magazine. I mean, she was a gorgeous woman. But also, it's unfortunate to hear how things kind of ended up with her kind of taking her life and resorting to suicide in the end. So rest in peace, Ashley. We love you. And I just want to say I'm sorry for all of the things that, you had to go through in your time with the company.
During a WWE tour of Kuwait by a man posing as a military doctor. She accused WWE of not responding seriously to her allegations when she told them. She says that Vince McMahon knew about it and that WWE functionally covered it up to protect the business. WWE put out a statement completely denying these claims, and they basically said that they were never informed that this had taken place, and if they had been, they would have reported it. A decade later, in 2019, Massaro was found dead in an apparent suicide.
Fucking tragic.
After the Janelle Grant allegations, Ashley Massaro's attorney released a previously unreleased statement from Massaro that claimed that Vince McMahon made sexual advances on her, that Vince was well known for this sort of thing. Massaro said she rejected him, but from her point of view, Vince responded by writing stories whose sole purpose was to just embarrass her.
You gonna cry now?
Vince, do this!
You're gonna cry! You're gonna cry! You're just plain and definite!
Since he was kind of removed from his job, Vince has sold all the stock in the company and completely left. One of the most powerful things for WWE is that they have been able to keep going without Vince, and they've been thriving without Vince.
Exactly. The WWE will survive without Vince McMahon, as I said earlier, and they've actually been thriving without Vince McMahon, okay? WWE and TKO, the juggernaut now, WWE and UFC combined. And also, I feel really good about having Stephanie McMahon and Triple H, Paul Levesque in control of the show now. Definitely more so than Vince McMahon. I've said it before, and this is probably around even 2019, 2020. I would tell people, listen, we may think that the product sucks and we may think that it sucks now. It's never going to change until Vince McMahon steps down and Vince McMahon is no longer involved. Because Vince McMahon, at the end of the day, is the one signing the checks for everybody. Vince McMahon is everybody's boss behind that curtain. Okay? Until he steps away from the WWE, you will never see it change. You will never get a different version of WWE without Vince until there is a WWE without Vince McMahon. So now that we finally have that, you can see things are definitely going in a little bit of a new direction, and I personally think a better direction.
Kickoff night 2 of WrestleMania!
We set records this week for social media, for merchandise, for sponsorship. Just destroyed records for Gate. This was legitimately the biggest WrestleMania of all time.
Last question. What do you think Vince's legacy will be?
Vince's legacy, my goodness, he is. His legacy is just. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one, huh?
Yeah, what do I think Vince McMahon's legacy is going to be? Man, it's a good question.
Oh, I think I might be the wrong guy to ask that question.
What do you think Vince's legacy will be? The greatest promoter of all time. He earned that. Even though there's things about him that I don't like or respect, you can't take that from him.
If you want a real view of Vince McMahon and pro wrestling, there's a lot of positive and there's a lot of negative. I mean, he's the most important figure in the history of wrestling. In his prime, he was an absolute creative genius, but he's far from a saint.
This is a man that wants more and more and more. I got an insatiable appetite for life, and I want more. It doesn't stop. And that's how you build something from $1 million to $1 billion to $10 billion.
Pro wrestling for all these years painted life in this very simple way. You know, there's good guys and there's bad guys. And I think that the real lesson of Vince McMahon is that, like, life is never that simple. You know, you have to be able to hold two things in your head at the same time. Like, it's possible that Vince McMahon created this thing that we all love, and at the same time, he is an incredibly problematic, potentially, like, deplorable human being. I'm sure he would like to go down as, like, the legend who created WWE, but anything good that he did is now inextricable from all the bad stuff that he did.
What's my legacy? I don't have one. Everyone has a certain feeling about who they think Vince McMahon is. But people really don't know me at all. A lot of people have confused through the years, who my character was on television and who I am. When I look in the mirror, I know who I'm looking at. I know the reflection. Describe Vince McMahon. That would be really very tough to do. Let's see. Egomaniac, physical culturist, someone who needs to be challenged every day, sexually active, psychologically challenged, sort of a paradox of paradoxes.
The only person in the world I need to thank is me, because I did it all. I did it all by myself.
Sometimes the lines of reality or fact and fiction are very blurred in our business. Sometimes what happens is performers start believing in themselves. They start believing in their own character. The individual loses all sense of who they really are personally. They become the character.
My name is not Vince. My name is Mr. McMahon.
I'm wondering myself now, which is the character and which is me. I guess maybe it's a blend. And I would suggest that one is exaggerated a little bit. But I'm not so sure which one.
Vince McMahon is currently under federal criminal investigation related to the allegations of sexual misconduct and trafficking. Brock Lesnar has not publicly commented on his involvement in the allegations. Janelle Grant's lawsuit is paused while the federal investigation is conducted. And that is the final episode, episode 6, the finish of the Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon documentary series here on Netflix. We talked about a lot of controversy. We found out some things that were maybe a little bit too graphic for some of these modern day wrestling fans who didn't grow up with the same kind of wrestling that I did. Hopefully, though, everybody out there enjoyed these videos, and maybe there will be a season 2 when more truth comes out, when more things are kind of brought up to the surface. I definitely enjoyed, sitting down, hanging out, and trying to make some good content for you guys here on the Vince McMahon documentary series. I know that later today, we are going to be doing a Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Halloween special. So definitely check that out if you have time. I definitely appreciate it. But that is going to do it for the Vince McMahon series here on Netflix. All I can say is I know that WWE is definitely in good hands now with their merger with the UFC and TKO. Stephanie McMahon and Triple H, Paul Levesque, they're doing great things with the company right now. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is a part-time owner. Like I said, I want Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as a president in the United States of America. Triple H has brought his buddies in. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Shawn Michaels, maybe one day even John Cena after John Cena retires. His retirement coming up as well soon. I think the company is going to survive without Vince McMahon. And I think that the direction they're going in is definitely improvement on what Vince McMahon did before. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for hanging out and being here with me. I appreciate your viewership and your support so much. It means everything to me. It really does. Until next time, peace, God.